Hi friends, my name's Emma and let's talk spooky stuff. Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to a monthly wrap up. I've been doing these videos for years now and you love them and I love doing them. So thank you so much for returning. I have to admit this month, a little bit of a stinker. Totally my fault, just some of the picks I went with or the flicks I went with. But I do have a lot of TV as well to talk about. There definitely are some gems in there, but they are hidden. But let's just get into it all because there's a lot to get through. I'm going to start with TV today just to switch it up. I watched the Trainwreck Woodstock documentary on Netflix. I do know there is another one. I believe it's on Hulu in America. I know it's on Binge in Australia. I have not watched that yet. Wow. Wow. I'm not really into like music festival documentaries. I mean, I watched the Fire Festival, of course, but I had no idea what I was in for, and it really is a true crime doco series. It's absolutely horrifying and made me feel physically ill. I do have like, I don't know if this is like a hot take, but I do think that people kind of glamorize what Woodstock originally was, and because social media is so different, there's probably, you know, some bad stuff that went on back then. I think social media has really allowed the people to speak about things going wrong in these festivals and situations and have angles and evidence to things that we didn't have before. Although, of course, Woodstock 99, we didn't have smartphones and social media. It was just covered a lot better with archive footage and people, going there to the scene, and there was a lot more evidence. I've thought about this a lot recently because in Australia there's a festival that's called Splendor in the Grass, and it was a complete literal shit show. This year there was mud everywhere that was full of like feces, and yeah, it's so bad, but social media really helped highlight a lot of festival goers' grievances. And sorry, this is totally off topic, I feel, but it's just really interesting having the coverage and the footage and the interviews now for these kinds of docos. I'm sure that's a doco coming very soon. But yes, Woodstock 99, absolutely insane, really interesting because the bands and all of that coming up at that time, that's the kind of music I like. So it was really sad to see how much participation some of the artists had in what happened, but I do really recommend it. I think it was really well done, really gripping, and yeah, pretty eye-opening. A lot of people didn't even know that festival happened. So I think although it's a little bit weird, there was another documentary about the same subject matter around the same time of release. Obviously, I think it was released last year. I think that it is really worth a watch if you're looking for something that's really going to shock you, and especially if you don't know anything about the festival, that's the best kind of way to go into it because it's gonna completely blow your mind. I watched The Most Hated Man on the Internet, which is another 3-parter Netflix documentary series. This is the story of Hunter Moore and AnyoneUp.com. I felt like it was really stretched out and it could have just been we always talk about this on this channel, I know this is nothing new, but I felt like it could have been a movie instead of a documentary series. They really tried to pull out a lot more into the narrative when it was kind of straightforward, and it all, again, it's another like social media type event. It's all plain evidence right in front of you, and I felt like they really tried to stretch out a story that really wasn't there, but of course, like, obviously what this guy did was insane. And the sad thing about all of this is it's not actually that crazy though, because we see it so often and we're seeing it right now with different personalities online, and it's really sad to see that nothing's really changed. So if anything, it felt like almost, I don't know, like this Black Mirror dystopian feeling to it, that we're actually living in an age where this is very socially accepted today. If you don't know about the AnyoneUp.com, it's basically a revenge website that was made without anyone's permission who is involved on it. Obviously that's what revenge is, but yeah, it's just really dark and really disturbing, and it's so disturbing to see where social media has kind of like shifted to because of all of this. Yeah, I don't know if I'd recommend this one so much. If you do know about the website, it probably is interesting to kind of have it all summed up into one thought, but I do feel like, especially part 1 is just really stretched out and nothing really happens. I feel like a lot of these Netflix documentaries, they wait for like a cliffhanger at the end of Ep 1 just to kind of keep you going, so you can binge the whole series, but sometimes there is no cliffhanger and you just have to keep like rolling with the facts, you know? Something really interesting that I watched this month, which is technically considered a docudrama series, is The Rehearsal. I heard about this and I kind of went into it a little bit blind. I didn't know about the comedian Nathan Fielder too well at all. I didn't really follow any of his stuff, so it was really interesting going in blind. I know a lot of you who have seen it are probably like, oh my god, that would have been so strange. So This is the hardest thing I've ever had to explain online, and if you've seen it, you understand. The best way to put it is they kind of set the show up within the first episode, which gives you kind of like the blueprint of what he's trying to do, but then it just kind of goes deeper and deeper and like implodes in on itself. But basically, he is trying to set up situations that are identical to something that someone has to do as a rehearsal. So the first episode is a guy who's having to have this tough conversation with someone, with a friend that he knows. And so they set up this conversation so that they can figure out every single way that this conversation could go to get it right. So they hire someone to be the person that he is going to have this tough conversation with, to really impersonate her down to the core, which they go through crazy methods to do, and they build a whole set in a usual place that they would go, and they basically set up the conversation so that every single possibility or outcome that will happen is presented in that environment, so they can figure out the best way to get to their desired outcome. So that's why it's called the rehearsal. They're basically rehearsing real life situations, and from there, that's like the most straightforward episode. It goes absolutely wild, wacky, and you just kind of have to really keep glued to the TV. And yeah, it's not for everyone, but it's very dry, very strange, and I absolutely loved it. I loved it. I thought it was so interesting and really poses a lot of questions. I laughed, I cried. It's amazing. I love this kind of TV, completely original, which is really hard to find in TV, and a very strange mix of what really is real and what isn't. Yeah, absolutely loved the rehearsal, and I highly recommend, if you haven't checked it out, to at least watch episode 1. But it's definitely a conversation starter, so you may want to watch it with someone who will also like that kind of content, because it's very weird to kind of turn the TV off at the end of that one, and I didn't watch it with my partner, so I just kind of sat there for a while. So I probably would recommend, watching it with someone. To balance that out, I watched something completely mindless. I have to say, I am a Selling Sunset fan. I wouldn't say fan, that's a bit strong, but I watched Selling OC. I was really disappointed with it. Nothing really happened in the whole season. The drama, insane, stupid. I don't even know what they were arguing about half the time. If you do not know Selling OC is a spin-off of Selling Sunset, it's a reality show about realtors, and they show off these houses. I was going to say amazing houses, but they're not really. They're really creepy because they're like multiple $1 million houses that are basically showrooms and no one's actual house. It's very strange, and it's a sneak peek into a very strange Hollywood lifestyle. So it's got that mixed with dramas of them trying to it kind of starts within their personal relationships and them working together, and it's like a whole deep dive into this politics between everyone. So this spin-off series just started, which this was the first season of, Selling OC, and yeah, I watched the whole thing. So I mean, what can I say? It definitely sucked me in, but not much really happened. It was a lot of forced drama, but sometimes you need that, especially after watching the rehearsal. I felt like this was the counterbalance for that. I did watch the other doco series on Netflix, I Killed My Father. This took a while for me to watch because I just didn't know if I was in the right headspace. It isn't what you think, but you do start off with a 911 call about a man or a boy, I guess, a teen who's murdered his father, and then it kind of goes into the history and his verdict and him going to court. It's mainly professionals in law, and then also people involved in crime investigation getting to the bottom of why he did it. And it's definitely a little bit twisty, but not as twisty as I expected. A lot of people said that they're really shocked by this series, and I thought there's been other ones that have, I'm not that I should be shocked, but I've seen other things that cover the same kind of story, and it is really hard to watch. It's extreme abuse. I'll definitely give you a warning for that. But I thought, again, it could have been better and more of an impact if it was a documentary setting instead of a documentary series, because 3 episodes, I felt like it was kind of confusing the way it was structured. It was kind of trying to knock you back and forth instead of just giving you all the facts, because the facts speak so loudly by themselves that they didn't really need to try and knock the audience's perspective around. But I still think if you are into to true crime, it is worth a watch, and it's on Netflix. And the last thing I watched, another docuseries on Netflix. Seriously, they get me every time. But this is part of the Untold series, which is mainly, well, it is focused on sports stars, athletics, athletes, all that stuff. So usually I don't watch these, but my partner does watch them. But there was one that was kind of in between true crime and almost catfishing. It's called Untold, The Girlfriend Who Didn't Exist. And this is about a football player. I'm so confused with like the football player terminology, so don't even get me started because this is American football. We have Australian football, so it's like a whole obviously different ball game. Ha ha ha. So bad. But this is a super strangely done and almost like borderline offensive. The way it's presented is just a very strange situation as well, about a guy who had a relationship online with a girl, and obviously it turned out to, the title, it turned out not to be the same situation. It's very much a catfish situation, but yeah, it's done in a very strange way where the interviews, I just don't know how they did this, but they did them out of order and they're using like strange terminology and it doesn't seem to flow. I feel like they bit off more than they could chew because they made this part of this series instead of making it its own thing, where I think it needed a little bit of more love and care and attention to detail than it had. So I felt like it was a little bit strange, especially once the reveal kind of happens. The way they kind of tiptoe around it is really odd. If you're going to take on this subject matter, you got to take it on like head on, and so I probably wouldn't recommend that, to be honest. Okay, I think that's all of the TV. Obviously reruns of The Office, but let's move on to movies. So I'm using Letterboxd. Sorry if I don't say every time that the app I use is Letterboxd. It's always linked down below. I always have people asking, and I'm really sorry. I should say it more often. Oh my gosh, the start of this month was so wild. I can't believe that was just a month ago. It feels like so long ago I watched these movies. I watched They, Them. I did a whole review on this, and I also did a stream with Nightmare Maven, my friend Vicky, and we talked about They, Them and Friday the 13th, which is Friday the 13th not on here, or did I watch it last month? I don't know, it's not on here. I should have logged that as well. But I watched those two kind of back to back. But this first watch was for my review, so if you want to check out my review. I watched Not Okay, and I have to say this is one of my favorite non-horror movies I've watched this year. Totally worth it. It's on Disney in Australia, so that was fun. Absolutely, oh my gosh, it was so good. I thought it was going to be like this edgy kind of comedy about this girl who she wants to prove everyone wrong and be successful, and she wants to go to Paris. This is like a very short story of how to explain it, to be honest, because it is very in-depth. But she's a person who's not taken seriously, and she wants to be a writer, so she pretends that she's gone to this writer retreat in Paris. And there is actually like this famous story about someone doing this pre-pandemic where they pretended to go to Europe and they photoshopped themselves in all of the photos. So it kind of starts off with that idea about her pretending to go to Paris to try and get some traction on her writing and for people to take her seriously. But then this all really falls apart because there is a terrorist attack in Paris when she's supposed to be there. I'm not going to say any more. That is just not the last twist to this story. I tell you what, it's absolutely amazing, incredible. It has this really interesting warning that comes up at the start of the film that talks about how she is not a likable protagonist, and it challenges the way you view her and the way you view the film. And I've seen so many people break it down and so many like in-depth analysis to it. I just love it. It's so interesting. Really recommend checking it out. You will not be able to deviate from the screen. I was glued to this film. I watched Bullet Train, which I reviewed on my Patreon. I do extra videos over there, including reviews and really like laid back videos. And yeah, I really liked this one, which is a surprise because I don't love action films, but it was just a silly action film. There definitely was a lot towards the end with the big finale that kind of took it down a little bit of a notch for me, but I thought it was fun. The dialogue was really clever, and I liked the way they involved a lot of the personal relationships in the story instead of it just being action back to back to back, especially with something called Bullet Train. I thought it was just going to be non-stop action, and there's a lot of like funny parts, but also like sad parts in there. So yeah, I thought it was really fun. It was like fast-paced, cool writing, and I love seeing Brad Pitt, so I loved that. I watched Resurrection, which I did a review of. absolutely insane. And I really, really enjoyed all the comments on there. There were so many things I didn't even get into in that. When you do like a deep dive or you really like focus on a topic for a video, sometimes it's really hard to include so much. And so many of you have such good theories. So if you have not seen that movie, I recommend going to watch it and then look at my comment section of that video, because people have put in such interesting stuff. There's so many different ways you can take this movie. It's really stuck with me, but a very interesting film. If you don't know, it is about a woman. She has a break, a mental break, when someone from her past reappears in her current life. It is so insane. A lot of people have said that they found it boring. I mean, not a lot of people. A couple of people I've seen in the comments have said that they found it boring. So I think it is important to say it is a slow moving movie. It's like a thriller suspense thing that like really, if it works for you, it will suck you in deep, and it's very dark. So I would put that in the category of disturbing. It's definitely like disturbing cinema, which I'm a big fan of. I watched Nope. I think this was the second time I saw it in the cinema. Every time it gets better. I can't even explain to you. If you have not seen it twice, see it twice, because there are so many things in this film that I did not realize until I saw it back the second time, and you can't realize because once you understand the ending, a lot of other things make sense throughout the film. Just like Jordan Peele, you have to see it twice, you have to see it 3 times, and yeah, every time I watch it, I'm like, this is absolutely amazing. And I understand a lot of people said they didn't like this film or it didn't live up to the hype, but for me, that was not a surprise, because Us, which is one of my favorite horror movies of all time and my favorite Jordan Peele film, a lot of people didn't even like it. So I was not surprised when a lot of people said that they didn't like it like I did. And that's totally fine. Obviously, we all have different tastes. I rewatched They Them for the Does This Offend You stream. I had to do it because I'd watched so many films in between. And I also rewatched Friday the 13th. So if you want to hear me talk about those films, that's on that stream, and it's quite long. So there's a lot to be said. I watched the Andy Baker tape. This is one that I talked about in What Was Coming to VOD last month. And it was okay. I just didn't feel like much happened. It's set during the pandemic, where a guy who's like a food vlogger, he finds out that he has I want to say step brother, yeah. And he goes to hang out with him and films like his YouTube channel along the way. So I love that crossover. I love the found footage. But I just didn't feel like there was a lot that happened, and you were sitting there kind of like waiting for some big moment or some big kind of interesting perspective, because he's given such an interesting backstory with like his food vlogging, but nothing like really transpires, and I feel like it just goes through the motions a little bit. But it's not the worst film. It's on Tubi for free if you want to watch it. I watched Let Him Go. I think I was just up really late one night. I just put on this random movie. I had no idea what this movie was. Oh my god, this movie was brutal, like super disturbing. I did not expect it, because like look at that poster. I didn't think it was going to be as disturbing as it was. So this is about a husband and wife who unfortunately it's kind of hard. I don't really want to spoil how it happens. Basically, their grandson is taken by his mother and now is living with a new family. And they realize that they might not be in the best situation and go to try and rescue him from this abusive situation. It is a very like, I don't want to say adventure film, but it's like a journey film. Like, you know, obviously they're traveling, but they meet different people along the way that has to do with the story. And it's pretty brutal. Like the violence in this film, insane. I thought it was pretty good for what it was. Like I'm not really in the core demographic of those films, and I don't normally watch those kinds of films. But yeah, I thought it's definitely worth a watch. I watched Intrusion. I'm trying to remember this. Oh my God, this was really bad. This is one of those things that keep coming up on Netflix. I'm like, what is that? I need to finally figure it out. I very much regret it. And it took me so long to figure out that it was Logan Marshall Green, because he looks so different. That's him in there. He looks so different in this movie. I could not believe it. Oh God, he used to be so cool. What happened? So sad. So this is about a man and wife living together in a house. I'm so not enthused. And then there's this intrusion, like a home invasion kind of situation, and she starts getting suspicious when her husband doesn't really give all the facts, and just things start not adding up, and she starts to suspect that he might be up to something. That's it. I mean, it is meant to be like twisty and turny, and there is one kind of surprise in there, but once you've seen these types of films and you hear the clues, you can put it together. The acting is really bad. I don't get it. Why is he in this movie? What is he doing? And I mean, she wasn't bad either. I don't think I've seen her in much, but it was just a very cliche movie, kind of like Lifetime thing, and not even Lifetime. I rewatched The Number 23, which is Jim Carrey, one of his serious roles, where this is really dark. I haven't seen this for a long time, and I forgot the editing in this is very like early, I guess, yeah, 2000s kind of. I mean, it's 2007, which is late 2000s, but it feels like early 2000s. It feels very Butterfly Effect, which I do love Butterfly Effect, don't get me wrong, but like the transition shots and stuff, I didn't realize there was so much stylization to the editing. Think of like House of Echoes kind of feel. It is about a man who reads a book and pretty much spirals into insanity because he gets connected to the numbers and trying to make sense of why the number 23 keeps coming up. That's the short version of it. The long version, I'm not sure if I actually understand this movie. I'm going to be completely 100% with you. It's a bizarre, it asks you to really check your logic at the door for a little while. And although I'm like halfway there to having my logic at the door all the time, I'm not fully there, if you can read between those lines. So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like this is one of those movies that are best watched when it first came out, but when you revisit it, it just doesn't have the same effect. And the editing is a little bit outdated, I would say. It's not a bad movie. It's just not as epic and dark as I remembered it being. I rewatched Annihilation. I did this with some of my patrons. What a beautiful movie. And I forgot so much that happened in this movie. So much, especially the ending. This one is a Netflix film. It's not a Netflix original, but unlike other countries, we didn't even get this one in the cinemas, and I'm so sad about it. It's Alex Garland with Natalie Portman, where a group of professionals need to go into this area that is deemed like the Shimmer, and they need to try and figure out what's causing this strange reaction to the environment around it. And yeah, it's a very interesting film based on a book. Highly recommend if you haven't seen it. Absolutely beautiful, beautiful movie. I watched When I Consume You. I was hoping to do a review on this, but it was one of those films I felt very indifferent to. It is about a brother and sister who, it says seek revenge against an evil force that has haunted them since childhood. I mean, that's a way of saying without spoiling it, I guess. I think that this film suffers from trying to focus on too many things all at once, and although that sounds like a very straightforward logline, the film really, I had no idea where it was going, to be frank with you. I don't think it really executed one thing well, which kind of bothers me. I thought it was quite boring, and it wasn't really following cohesively on one train of thought. The film also mirrors a lot of ideas from addiction, which I think is done quite well. There are like really cool aspects to this movie. It's not a straightforward idea I can really explain without spoiling anything, but I do think that there's some cool thoughts and ideas like sprinkled in there, and I really think that's where the film probably came from. I think that there was like, oh, why don't we put this in a film? I haven't seen them do it in this way before, but they never like followed through that idea and made that like the center. They just kind of put it throughout the film, so it didn't really feel like anything was a complete thought. So I did not really enjoy that one. I watched Girl at the Window, sorry. These movies, they will never stop having these titles, and it shakes me to my core. I think you can see here by the people who have reviewed it what I thought about this film. I actually was going to do a main channel video for this, and yeah, I ended up putting it on my Patreon. It's like a rant, turned into a full-on rant. The movie is meant to be about a girl who suspects her neighbor who's dating her mum as doing something sinister in a suburb. It's an Australian thriller, horror. There is some really horrific scenes in it. The gore is insane, but it is really poorly put together. It's a poorly shot film. It's like the logistics of it doesn't make sense. There's a lot of technical errors. There's a lot of continuity errors, and the acting is just, I don't know what, everything was wrong, and I did not enjoy this. I saw this one at the cinema actually, and I did not enjoy it. I would not recommend it. I watched Orphan and Orphan First Kill. These, of course, I did a review on Orphan's First Kill. It was really fun rewatching The Orphan, or just Orphan. I think it's a fantastic film, and the way it's put together is, yeah, I love the first one. I thought the first one's really good, And if you've watched my review, you know how I feel about the second one. I rewatched Nope. I went and saw this again. This is my third time seeing it in the cinema. I went and took my partner because he hadn't seen it yet. And I went with the person I saw it the second time with as well. So yeah, it was so good. I just love that movie. I watched Glorious, which this is a new Shudder original film. I thought it was done pretty well. The main actor, I forget his name. He's Australian though. Ryan Quanten, I think I say his name like that. And J.K. Simmons. Very interesting film. I think it's actually a pretty good watch. It is about a guy who's really in a bad way. He's gone through a lot. He wakes up after a bender and he goes to use this rest stop, and then he's locked inside with something. It's a beautiful movie. It's low budget, but it's done really well in a one location. If you like one location horrors, you'll probably really enjoy this one. And yeah, it's a really interesting mashup of fantasy elements with horror, and it's kind of something fresh. I would recommend it. I thought it was pretty good. I then watched Beast, which I did a review on, a Come With Me review. I'm so excited that I've been going to the cinema so much more recently. There's just been a lot of stuff coming out, and the same is next month as well, which is really exciting. So make sure you're subscribed. If you're not subscribed, make sure you're subscribed. And if you want to hit the bell notification, then you'll get an actual notification when I get new videos, so you'll never miss one. But I did a video for Beast, which I kind of enjoyed this movie. I mean, in a way that I was definitely expecting exactly what it was. If you go into a movie with, acting against a lion, a CGI lion, that's what you expect. But I have a whole reaction to it if you want to go check that out. And then I got to go see The Invitation, which I did a review on. You got to be really careful with this one because there's a lot of spoilers out there. And if you've seen the trailer, God, what an annoying time. But the movie is about a woman who gets an invitation to go meet her long lost relatives that she hasn't seen before, didn't really know existed, and when she's there, she finds out not everything is as it seems, to stay very vague. If you've seen the trailer and if you've seen any of the articles, I'm sure they've given away a lot, but I was not very enthusiastic about this movie. I was trying to be. It didn't end well, which is kind of another rant I did this month, but yeah, I did a whole video dedicated to that. Here's where we go downhill. I watched That's Amore. Don't do it. These Netflix movies, I'm like, this could be a cute something to do while I'm going through emails, and it just was a waste of actual time. This is such a poorly made film that makes no sense. Sorry to everyone who's watched it and liked it. Makes no sense. It's about a girl who has a breakup and loses her job on the same day, and then she meets this guy and they fall in love. Wow, shocker. And they have no chemistry, which is the most bizarre thing about this. And I say in my review here, possibly the low point was there was a montage of her, because she goes to stay with her mum when all her life is falling apart. She goes to stay with her mum and they're doing a fun, oh my God, we love each other in the kitchen when she's starting to feel better. And they're cooking something made of chicken, and they're literally chasing each other with their hands. And usually it's cookie dough or pancake batter or whatever, but they had to do it with raw chicken on their hands. It's the most bizarre movie, and not in a good way. It was just boring, and yeah, the lead character, I just didn't like her at all, but the chemistry between her and her love interest is zero. There's no chemistry. It was weird. I didn't like it. I watched The Curse of Audrey, Earnshaw. I found this one on Shudder. This is about a town which is suffering from what they think is a curse, and there's a woman there who, her farmland is the only place where crops have grown, and it causes tension between her and the other villagers, and she has this daughter that's a secret. I thought it was okay. Again, not much happens. It's a slow burn, which a lot of these kind of folky period pieces are. They're normally quite slow, very much reminiscent of The Witch in a way, but these films are always going to unfortunately remind me of that. Cool poster though. Love the poster. I think it's okay. If you're into those kinds of period pieces, definitely check it out though, because it's not my favorite kind of subject matter, or I guess era to watch horror in. So if you are into that, you'll probably get a big kick out of it. I then watched So Vam, and I wanted to like this film so much, but it was so awful. It's an Australian vampire flick where nothing is held back. The audience is told everything from the very start, and it's really low budget, and the acting is just so dry, and Yeah. Oh god, it was bad. It centers around the protagonist who is gay and lives in like a small town in Australia, so he's not accepted. And basically he has a fight with his friend. So then he goes off and he almost gets eaten by a vampire or killed by a vampire, but then someone comes and rescues him. And it is this weird, like, trying to not give away too much of what happens, but it's this weird dynamic between him and his friend having this argument, and then it becomes her fault that he's gone off and done this, even though it shouldn't have been. It's just very weird how they try and get from point A to point B. I don't feel like the writing was very strong in what they were trying to say for a lot of it. I feel like, again, this is a film that had an idea and a cool idea that they really wanted to represent, but then it falls to the wayside. Yeah, it was just, I don't know, it was just really poorly put together. I really was rooting for this one, but it did not work for me, unfortunately. I'm so sorry. I watched Elizabeth Harvest. This is a film that I always see the poster for, but I'd never watched. And this is an interesting idea if you're into sci-fi film. But again, execution, I don't know so much, but interesting idea. It's about a woman who, she gets married to this smart, rich man, and then she discovers something in his basement, and it all kind of like flips in on itself. It reminds me of Time Crimes in a way, but not in the way that you think. There's definitely like a looping aspect to it, but not what you think. So I thought it was an interesting sci-fi idea, very Black Mirror, but again, the execution was a little bit messy. If any of you have seen that one, let me know what you thought of it, because I'm very interested. And then I watched Surrogate. Surrogate is another Australian, I watched a lot of Australian films, didn't I? Another Australian film. This one is a horror. I actually think this one has a really original kind of feel to it. It does feel like in some senses there's a lot of inspiration drawn from The Ring, but there is a very interesting arc to the discovery and like what's going on. So basically, and this is kind of, it will feed into it because I'll be able to tell you about it in the intro. It's about a woman who's like overworked, a single mom who's overworked, and she one night tries to help someone who's like vomiting at a, it's very odd, vomiting at like a gas station, a petrol station, we would say in Australia. And she gives them mouth to mouth, and then from there she catches some element starts following her, and her life starts just completely falling apart. And there's just so many strange elements going on, and you're trying to figure out how the mystery comes together. And although it does to a degree at the end, I feel like they suffered from having a lot of cheesy horror elements, like creepy kid laughter and all that kind of stuff, when the story actually is quite strong. And it was really, there's this scene in it that's so scary. Yeah, there's some really, like, there's a whole like seance scene, there's all these different elements going on, and it's really interesting to try and pinpoint what is actually happening to her. So I do think it's well explained, but I feel like they get lost a little bit in the terms of trying to be horrific instead of just letting the story take lead. They try and play too much into the horror elements that they think are stereotypical horror elements for a horror audience, if that makes sense. So I was really on board for a lot of it, and the acting is really good. But there was just some moments I'm like, oh God, no, why did you do that? I would like to take those elements out. And I think without that, it'd be a really interesting low budget film. But it doesn't end there. I watched I Want You Back, which thank God I watched this movie. Just another random movie I chucked on. I think it was on Prime here. Love it. Obviously, I'll watch anything with Charlie Day in it. But this was, again, another little rom-com. And this one, I did not see what was going to happen. I kept trying to predict what was going to happen. And there's so many twists and turns to this story. So basically, who you see here, they both break up with their partners, separate partners, and then they meet and they decide they're going to get their partners back. So they use each other to kind of like go into the other person's ex-partner's life and try and kind of push them back together. It's very interesting, the twists and turns of this film, so I really liked that. Really interesting appearances too, lots of big guest stars or cameos, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really sweet. I cried at the end. This was the kind of like rom-com that I was looking for that night. So I really enjoyed it. So it was a good surprise. I would recommend if you're like rom-coms, easygoing movies, but this one is quite edgy. Definitely check it out. And then I watched Possession because I kept seeing this, I think on Amazon, I think it is. Sarah Michelle Gellar, with gosh, it's so stupid. I can't even. So this is about her, and she lives with her husband, and then her husband's brother, and her husband's brother is like, no go, red flag alert. And her husband and her husband's brother get into a car accident, and then they're both in a coma. I feel like I'm giving away too much, but I have to tell you this because it's like what the film is about. And her husband's brother wakes up and claims to be her husband. So that's where the title comes in, possession. So is he possessed by him, or, you know, what's going on? And that's what she intends to discover during the film. The whole idea is trash. The idea is trash, not because it's an actual it's just the way it's executed makes no sense. And yeah, it's not compelling. It's just kind of cringy the whole time. And Sarah Michelle, she can't save it. She can't save it. I would not watch this film. I thought it was really strangely put together and kind of sick, to be honest. Whoever made this was a little bit sick. Not a big fan. Probably wouldn't recommend to you. So this month, what I would recommend to you is I Want You Back. The Curse of Audrey Earnshaw, if you're into like Shudder films and you want to watch something that's more like folky. Glorious, totally recommend that one. I thought it was really interesting. Nope, if you haven't seen it, I don't have to tell you that. Orphan First Kill, I would recommend. Annihilation, if you haven't seen it. Let Him Go, I think, no, I was gonna say nice family movie, but definitely not a horror, but like a thrilling drama. Oh my god, I just totally skipped Gone in the Night. I don't know why I did that. Okay, let's go into that. I'm sorry if you've commented down below about that. I didn't mean to do that. Gone in the Night, Winona Ryder. I talked about this at the start of the month as something that was coming to VOD. Very strange movie about a woman who arrives at a cabin in the woods with her partner, but they have rented it for the weekend, but there is another couple already there. The film is not what you think though, what I loved about it. The film was not what you think. It's not all about that night. There's other things that happen. So those people who they arrive there, these strangers, they get to know them, and then her husband, or not her husband, sorry, it's her boyfriend just disappears. So the idea for this film is really interesting, and I really liked all of the different paths it took. I like these films that are trying to fool you and do so like successfully, but it doesn't give you all of the puzzle pieces, so you can kind of only know as much as you know at that time. But it is really interesting watching it unravel, although I do think it was quite messy. So I didn't love this film. I saw a lot of people really hated it, but you can see here, but I didn't think it was that bad. I think it's worth a watch if you like interesting stories and you're not sure where it's going to go. I will watch something for the originality, and this was pretty high up in originality factor. So yeah, check it out if you feel like it. Sorry, I don't know how I missed that. Resurrection, I would also recommend highly. Bullet Train, I'd recommend. And Not Okay, I totally recommend that. And please go watch that and come back and tell me how much you liked it, because I think that most all of you, I think 99%, if you watch my content, you'll like that film. Not that I have anything to do with what happens in that film, but I know my peeps. Okay, and that's everything I watched this month. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope that they were some good recommendations. I feel like it was more what not to watch this month. But let me know what you watched this month or last month, and let me know what your recommendations are, because I love when you do that. I definitely check them out. I'm always screenshotting different recommendations from you all, so thank you so much. And thank you so much for being here. If you want to support me, you can join my Patreon. It's only $2 a month, and I do new videos, bonus videos every single week. And if you want to go on a higher tier, you can join my Discord, which I'm really active in. Or if you want to go on the highest tier, you can also do hangout movie nights with me, where 2 times a month we hang out and watch movies on Zoom. It's really fun, and everyone is really cool over there. So shout out to my patrons, and shout out to you for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, that's a lot for me as well. That's a big support. So please give it a thumbs up and make sure you're subscribed, and I'll see you guys next time. I'm very excited. I have some really cool stuff coming up this month because there's so many things to see at the movie. So that's really, really fun. And then I also have some other surprises, some big updates for my channel. So very excited for all of that. Anyway, I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I'll talk to you all very soon. Bye, friends.